imagine that some of you have experience with what used to be called the Sunday school opening. At the Sunday school opening, all of the children would gather together along with the teachers in order to sing and take the offering before the classes occurred. Now, when I was doing this in the 60s, there were a lot of kids at the Sunday school opening. And I was thinking about that a little bit this past week, and I thought about it. They gave us these tiny little envelopes that mimicked the regular offering envelopes. And I was thinking about those poor people who had to open all those envelopes and count all those dimes and nickels and quarters. Anyway, at my Sunday school opening, we always, always, always started by singing, "Holy, holy, holy." So that now the song, "Holy, holy, holy," is in my memory banks permanently. And I'll be on my deathbed. I won't know my own name, I won't know my friends' names, but I'll be able to sing, "Holy, holy, holy." And that's not all bad. So anyway, there's a seminary professor named Thomas Long, and he was telling a story about his experience with Sunday school openings, more than 50 years ago. So he said that his Sunday school opening, they always closed with the same song. And the lyrics of the song were, "I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord." And he said that the Sunday school teachers explained that that meant that Christian people, were glad when they had the opportunity to go to church. Well, Dr. Long said that even as an itty-bitty tiny lad, he knew that there was something wrong with that. Because, indeed, he was not glad when it was time to go into the house of the Lord. He wasn't glad at all, because for him, and I suppose for many children, church was boring, and church was long, and church was uncomfortable. And so, indeed, he was not glad when they said to him, "Let us go into the house of the Lord." He was sad when they said unto him, "Let us go into the house of the Lord." And then he said, as he got older, and he became a teenager, and his parents no longer were making him put on those stiff clothes that he had to put on as a child, that they were still making him go to church. He was no longer sad when it was time to go into the house of the Lord. He was mad. Oh, you people are quick. He said, "I was mad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord." But he had to go anyway. And his only hope, he said, was that when he got to be an adult, he would be mature, and he would be wise, and he would be responsible, and then he would not be glad. He would not be sad, he would not be mad, but he would be glad. Here's the problem, though. We may sometimes be glad to go into the house of the Lord. We probably don't come in always sad or mad. But I would guess it's a bit much to expect that every single time we would be glad to come into the house of the Lord. In fact, I suspect that more often than being glad or sad or mad, we may feel lost. Not so much lost in the sense of, eternal punishment kind of lost, but more lost in the sense of feeling confused, or maybe distracted would be a word. Because life is just so more filled with challenges than we expected. Or maybe we're worrying about our children or grandchildren or some other people that we love. Or maybe there's financial stress in our lives. Or maybe we're afraid of the unknown future. Or maybe it just seems that the whole world is on a downhill trend. So that when we come into the house of the Lord, we're not necessarily glad or sad or mad, but we're more lost, more confused, more distracted. And that's why today I want us to focus not so much on what we are feeling when we come into God's presence, which, by the way, is all the time, since God is always present. It's not so much about today what we're feeling, but what God is feeling. Because that's what today's gospel lesson is about. It's about what God is feeling. You see, Jesus is talking to people who are criticizing him. They're criticizing him because he's associating with sinners and tax collectors. In other words, those who are considered to be outsiders, or as far as the religious people are concerned, people who are lost to God. And so Jesus wants to make it clear to them that God not only seeks out, but welcomes those who are considered to be lost, either by others or even to themselves. And so he tells these two stories. And of course he uses illustrations that the people can identify with, images that are familiar to them. A shepherd with a staff and a woman with a broom. And he says God is like these two images. And then he tells a story in which he seems to be indicating that the behavior of these two characters is normal. But the fact of the matter is, it's not normal. Which is probably what causes the people listening to him to sit and pay attention. So here's this shepherd. The shepherd has lost a sheep. And so the shepherd goes out to seek for the sheep. Well, that's probably normal, right? That's pretty normal behavior for a shepherd, except that the story says, somewhat explicitly, that he leaves the other sheep in the wilderness, implying that they're on their own. Why? Because this one sheep is so important. And so the shepherd's looking, finds the sheep. Now, does it say in the story that the shepherd pokes and prods the sheep with his staff in order to get the sheep to go back to the other sheep? No! What does he do? He picks him up. Now, does it say anywhere that the sheep is a cute little lamb? I mean, that's the picture we always see, right? Jesus carrying a little sweet lamb around his neck. Does it say that? I mean, I have been around sheep. Sheep can be big and smelly and dirty. Right? Well, it doesn't say that it's a cute lamb. It says that the shepherd picks up the sheep and carries it home so that it doesn't get lost. Or maybe because it's injured in some way and needs assistance. And then when the shepherd gets back to the flock with the sheep, what does the shepherd do? The shepherd celebrates, invites everybody to have a party because the wayward sheep has returned. Now I ask you, is all this normal behavior for your run-of-the-mill first century shepherd? No. No, I think not. And here's this woman. This woman has lost one of 10 coins. And so she just looks everywhere 1 of 10, that's 10%. You would look everywhere for that coin. She looks in every nook, every cranny. She's down on her hands and her knees. She's, got the little broom sweeping out the corners. Finally, after all these hours of searching, she finds the coin. And she's so happy. But does she put the coin with the others and save it for a difficult time? It does not seem so. Instead, she invites all her friends and neighbors to come in for a celebration. Now, if you're going to have a celebration, what are you going to do? You're going to spend money. You're going to provide some food, some drink. You're going to have a party. So it could very well be that she spent what she just spent all this time looking for. Now, is that typical behavior for a first century woman who's lost 10% of her income? No, I think not. And so the point is, now these people are listening to this and they're going, this is ridiculous. This kind of searching and celebrating, this is just ridiculous. That's the point. This extreme searching and celebrating is how God responds to us. God is so glad when, even though we feel as if we are lost, we finally figure it out that we're not lost, but we are found. Or as one commentator says, God is like a shepherd who's going through the bushes, looking for that sheep. God is like the woman who's down on her hands and knees looking at every floor crack for that coin. Because every single child is vital to God. So that if anyone goes missing, God goes into full search mode. And when the sheep is found in the brambles, God says, woohoo! I don't have to worry anymore. Or when the coin is picked up out of the crack, God says, look at this, let's have a party. You see, being lost or losing our way might be another way to put it. Going missing can mean a lot of things. It can mean that we have intentionally turned away from God. It can mean that perhaps we never really knew much about God to begin with. Or it can mean that in our day-to-day lives, as we deal with the pressures of living, some of which I mentioned earlier, we lose track of the power, presence, and grace of God in our lives. We forget that we have been found. And so God is so glad when we realize that God is always in tracking mode. And when we figure it out, that although sometimes we feel lost, we aren't. We are among those who are found. Continuously found, whether we realize it or not. There's a person who writes a blog named Steve Goodyear, and he reminds in his blog this week of a story written by Ernest Hemingway, famous author Ernest Hemingway, wrote a story about a man who was estranged from his son. And the son had gone to Madrid, Spain. So the father advertised in the newspaper in Madrid, Spain. And the advertisement said, Paco, I want to see you again. Meet me at the Montana Hotel at noon on Tuesday. All is forgiven. Love, your father. So the father went to the Montana Hotel at noon on Tuesday, hoping to be reunited with his son Paco. And what did he find there? 800 boys named Paco, hoping against hope to be reunited with their father. And Ernest Hemingway said, the reason all of those boys came is because of those words, all is forgiven. It's not, all will be forgiven if, or all might be forgiven when, but all is forgiven. And that's how God feels about us, you see. God understands, God acknowledges our lostness. And when we acknowledge that we are found, God rejoices, God is glad, God celebrates, God does a happy dance. Well, you know, you get the point, right? Amen.